Over 19,000 towns exist in the US, but a shocking number quietly tell people not to show up. They don't need a sign that says keep out. The peeling paint, the empty storefronts, the silence that hangs in the air heavier than humidity. It all screams the same message. You are not welcome here. And I'm not just talking about your typical ghost towns, places that died 100 years ago and now exist only for tourists. The places we're going to visit today are different. They're still breathing. But just barely. Most lists you'll find on the internet chase ghosts and legends, rattling off stories of haunted hotels and spooky cemeteries. And look, you know I'm a fan of a good ghost story. But the truth is, the real creepiness is structural. It's in the decisions that were made decades ago, in the poison seeping into the ground, in the slow, grinding decay of a place that was once somebody's home, somebody's dream. It's a horror you can see in broad daylight, and honestly, that's what makes it so much more unsettling. So today, we're going in 10 towns ranked from subtle wrongness to full-body nope, until one city makes you question what safe even means. Before we begin, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place. So please, like the video if you enjoy learning things that ruin road trips, and subscribe, because knowing where not to go is a life skill. Our first stop is at the southernmost tip of Illinois, a place called Cairo. Now, if you look at a map, Cairo should be thriving. It sits right where two of the biggest rivers in the country, the Ohio and the Mississippi, come together. For a long time, it was a boomtown. Steamboats chugged in and out, the streets were bustling, and people were building these incredible ornate buildings, convinced this place was the future. But the future had other plans. Today, Cairo is a shadow of its former self, a ghost with a skeleton of beautiful decaying architecture. The population has plummeted by over 80%. Imagine walking down a street lined with gorgeous Victorian mansions, but almost every single one is empty. Windows smashed, porches collapsing. It's not the silence of a peaceful country town, it's the heavy, oppressive quiet of abandonment. You can almost feel the weight of all the lives that were lived here, the memories that were made, and the heartbreak of watching it all crumble. The infrastructure, the very bones of the city, has outlasted the people who were supposed to be its lifeblood. It's like a museum where the exhibits are slowly rotting away. Driving through Cairo is a profoundly strange experience. You see a grand old library, a majestic theater, a stately bank, all boarded up, covered in graffiti, surrendering to nature. You might see a handful of cars, a few people going about their day, but they're moving through a landscape built for thousands more. It feels like you've stumbled onto the set of a post-apocalyptic movie. But the tragedy here is real, and it happened in slow motion, over decades of economic hardship and social strife. The emotional toll of a place like this is hard to describe. It's not about a jump scare or a spooky legend. It's the deep, lingering sadness of witnessing a slow death. Every crumbling brick and shattered window tells a story of decline, of hope that faded into resignation. You don't leave Cairo scared of ghosts. You leave with a heavy heart, haunted by the very real and tangible loss of an American dream. It's a place that warns you not with a shout, but with a mournful whisper. Number 9 on our list takes us to a place where the danger isn't just visible, it's been smoldering underfoot for over 60 years. This is Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town that is literally being consumed from the inside out. In 1962, a fire was started in a landfill. That sounds manageable, right? Except this landfill was located in an abandoned coal mine pit. The fire crawled its way into the labyrinth of anthracite coal veins that run beneath the entire town, and it has been burning ever since. For years, the residents tried to live with it. They went about their lives as smoke and toxic gases like carbon monoxide began to vent up through cracks in the ground, in their backyards, and even in their basements. The ground grew hot to the touch in places. Trees died, their roots cooked by the subterranean heat. The true oh no moment came in 1981 when a 12-year-old boy fell into a sinkhole that suddenly opened up in his grandmother's backyard. He was saved, but the hole was 150 feet deep and belching hot, toxic steam. That was the final straw. The government finally stepped in, declaring eminent domain and offering buyouts to the remaining residents. Over $1 billion was spent to relocate almost everyone. Today Centralia is almost completely gone, but what's so eerie is that the street grid is still there. The roads are eerily maintained, but they lead to nowhere. You can drive down what was once Locust Avenue or Park Street, and all you'll see are empty lots, overgrown foundations, and maybe a lonely staircase that once led to a family's front door. It's a grid of ghosts. What makes Centralia so deeply unsettling is the permanence of the disaster. This isn't a flood that recedes or a storm that passes. This fire could burn for another 250 years. It's a slow-motion catastrophe that will outlive all of us. The handful of residents who refuse to leave and still live there are a testament to human stubbornness, but they live on borrowed time, on top of an underground inferno. Driving on the cracked, steaming asphalt of the graffiti highway, you realize you're standing on a wound in the earth that will never heal. From a fire below to a sea of poison, our number 8 spot is Bombay Beach, California. In the 1950s and 60s, this place was advertised as the Salton Riviera, a playground for Hollywood stars on the shores of California's largest lake, the Salton Sea. People flocked here to boat, water ski, and fish. It was a vibrant, sun-drenched paradise. But the paradise was built on a foundation of ecological instability. The Salton Sea has no outlet, and for decades it's been the dumping ground for agricultural runoff, full of pesticides and fertilizers. As the lake began to shrink due to heat and lack of inflow, the salinity skyrocketed, becoming saltier than the Pacific Ocean. The water became a toxic soup. Massive fish and bird die-offs became a regular occurrence, leaving the beaches literally covered in millions of rotting carcasses and bones. The smell on a hot day is indescribable, a mix of salt, decay, and algae. The dream of the Salton Riviera died, and Bombay Beach was left to rot along with it. What's truly bizarre about Bombay Beach is that it's not entirely abandoned. A small, resilient, and very eccentric community still lives there, alongside a growing number of artists who are drawn to the apocalyptic landscape. They've turned the ruins into art installations. You can walk along the beach and see skeletons of old boats, trailers half sunk in the mud, and sculptures made from the junk left behind. The light here is often stunningly beautiful, casting a golden glow over a landscape of death and decay. This contrast is what makes Bombay Beach so profoundly creepy. It's a place of immense natural beauty overlaid with man-made horror. The air you're breathing, which can be filled with dust from the toxic lakebed, is a genuine health hazard. You're walking through a beautiful, surreal art park that could also be slowly poisoning you. It's a warning about what happens when we try to force a paradise where it doesn't belong and then walk away from the consequences. The beauty draws you in, but the poison tells you to run. For number 7, we're traveling to a place so remote, it feels like the edge of the world, and, in a way, it is. Kivalina is a tiny Inupiat village perched on the tip of a narrow barrier reef in northwestern Alaska, right between a lagoon and the Chukchi Sea. For generations, the people here have lived in harmony with their environment, relying on the sea ice for hunting whale and seal, and for protection. The ice acted as a natural barrier, shielding their sliver of land from the violent autumn and winter storms. But that protection is now gone. Due to climate change, the sea ice forms later in the year and melts earlier. The village is now completely exposed to the full force of the ocean. Storms that were once a nuisance are now existential threats, eroding the shoreline and flooding the village with terrifying regularity. In 2007, a single storm washed away nearly a third of their beach. Kivalina is, without a doubt, going to be swallowed by the sea. The only mystery is when. The entire village of 400 people is living on borrowed time. The creepiness here isn't about decay or abandonment. It's about the terrifying certainty of a disaster that you can see coming. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has said the island will be uninhabitable within a decade. Imagine knowing that your home, the place where your ancestors are buried, the land that is central to your entire culture and identity, is going to disappear beneath the waves in your lifetime. The community has been fighting for years to relocate, but the logistical and financial hurdles are immense. So they wait. They live with a constant low-grade anxiety, watching the waves get closer every year. The resilience of the Inupiat people is incredible, but they are facing a force they cannot fight. Visiting Kivalina, or even just seeing the footage, is to witness a community holding its breath. It's a heartbreaking and deeply unsettling preview of a future that many coastal communities around the world may face. The threat isn't a ghost, it's the rising water lapping at their doorsteps. Coming in at number 6 is a town that was declared one of the most toxic in America. Welcome to Picher, Oklahoma. At one time, Picher was a boomtown, a major hub for lead and zinc mining that was crucial during both world wars. The town was built, literally and figuratively, on the wealth pulled from the ground. But that wealth came at a terrible hidden cost. Decades of unregulated mining left behind a toxic legacy that would eventually render the entire area uninhabitable. The problem was the chat, the gravel-like waste product from the mines. For miles in every direction around Picher, there are mountains of this stuff, some of them hundreds of feet high. These chat piles are laced with heavy metals like lead. The wind would whip up the toxic dust and blow it all over town, coating everything. Kids used the chat piles as playgrounds, they even filled their sandboxes with it. The water was contaminated, the ground itself was poison. As if that wasn't bad enough, the ground beneath Picher is a honeycomb of old mine tunnels. The town was literally Swiss cheese. Sinkholes began to open up without warning, swallowing cars, roads, and parts of buildings. The high school football stadium had to be condemned because it was on the verge of collapsing into a mine shaft. The town was simultaneously being poisoned from the air and eaten from below. It was a completely man-made, inescapable, environmental nightmare. In the mid-2000s, the government finally declared Picher a Superfund site and began a mandatory buyout and relocation. By 2009, the town officially ceased to exist. Today, it's a wasteland. The chat piles still dominate the horizon like alien pyramids. A few crumbling buildings remain, but mostly it's just empty streets and concrete slabs where homes once stood. Driving through Picher is like touring a battlefield after the war is over, a silent, haunting monument to corporate greed and environmental devastation. Okay, for our number 5 spot, I have to make a slight correction. There isn't a Pripyat, Pennsylvania, but there is a place that carries a similar chilling legacy of invisible danger. I'm talking about the area around the Shippingport Atomic Power Station, America's first full-scale, commercial nuclear power plant, just 25 miles from Pittsburgh. While it never had a disaster on the scale of Chernobyl, its very existence, and the story of its decommissioning, serves as a stark reminder of the permanent dangers of nuclear power. The plant operated from 1957 to 1982. When it came time to shut it down, it became the site of one of the first and largest nuclear decommissioning projects in the world. This was an incredibly complex and dangerous process. The reactor vessel itself, weighing 956 tons and still highly radioactive, had to be encased in concrete, lifted out, put on a barge, and shipped 8,000 miles to a nuclear waste burial site in Washington state. The entire process took years and cost nearly $100 million. The land was eventually declared safe for unrestricted use. But the psychological impact on the surrounding communities is a different story. For decades, people lived in the shadow of this massive, humming atomic machine, with the low-grade, constant awareness of what could happen. It's a type of fear that's very different from a ghost story. It's a cold, scientific fear. The danger is silent, odorless, and invisible. You can't see radiation, you can't smell it, but its effects are devastating and can last for thousands of years. This is the true creepiness of places with a nuclear legacy. It's the permanence of the waste, the knowledge that we have created a poison with a half-life that extends beyond human civilization. Even after the plant is gone, the story remains. It seeps into the local consciousness. It's the fear of the unknown in your own backyard, the unsettling feeling that even though you're being told it's safe, some invisible threat might still be lingering in the soil or the water. It makes you question the very ground you stand on. At number 4, we have a town that is not just abandoned, it's actually actively guarded. You just cannot go to Gilman, Colorado. Perched dramatically on the side of a cliff in the Rocky Mountains, Gilman was a prosperous mining town for, wow, nearly a century. From a distance, it looks like a perfectly preserved ghost town, kind of like a postcard from the Old West. But get any closer, and you'll run into fences, warning signs, and even patrols from the Environmental Protection Agency. Gilman is, well, forbidden ground. The town lived and died by the Eagle Mine, which produced zinc and lead. Just like in Picher, the mining operations contaminated, honestly, everything. The soil, the groundwater, and the nearby Eagle River were polluted with arsenic, cadmium, copper, lead, and zinc at levels that were dangerously toxic. The mine was finally shut down in 1984, not because the ore ran out, but because the EPA ordered it closed. The entire town of Gilman was evacuated and declared a Superfund site. What makes Gilman so uniquely unsettling is this sense of it being off-limits. Most ghost towns, you can walk around, you can peek in the windows, you can feel the history. Gilman is frozen in time, but it's like behind glass. The houses still have furniture in them, the schoolhouse has books on the shelves. It's as if everyone just got up and left one afternoon, expecting to come back. But they never did. And now, no one is allowed to. It's a perfectly preserved corpse of a town that is simply too poisonous to touch. This creates an intense feeling of mystery and, honestly, dread. What exactly is so dangerous that the government has to patrol it to keep people out? The visual of this beautiful, precariously placed town on a cliffside, combined with the knowledge that it's actually a toxic wasteland, is deeply disturbing. It's a place that looks like an adventure but is actually a threat. The fact that you're not allowed in makes you want to know what's inside, but also, it really reinforces the terrifying reality of the poison that has saturated every inch of it. Our number 3 spot goes to a place that doesn't even exist on maps anymore. It was wiped off the face of the earth, not by a natural disaster, but by a catastrophic mistake. This was Times Beach, Missouri, a small, lower-middle-class town on the Merrimack River. In the early 1970s, the town had a problem with dust on its unpaved roads. To solve it, the city hired a waste oil hauler named Russell Bliss to spray the roads down, which, honestly, was a pretty common practice at the time. Unfortunately for the people of Times Beach, Russell Bliss wasn't just hauling regular waste oil. He had also been hired to dispose of a toxic byproduct from a chemical plant that made Agent Orange. This byproduct was dioxin, one of the most toxic chemicals ever created by man. For 4 years, Bliss mixed this deadly waste with the oil and sprayed it all over the 23 miles of dirt roads in Times Beach. He sprayed it everywhere, in front of homes, churches, and businesses. The effects weren't immediate, but soon, animals started getting sick and dying. Horses, birds, and family pets were dropping dead. People started suffering from strange health problems, skin rashes, headaches, and other ailments. The CDC eventually came in to investigate, and in 1982, they took soil samples. The results were terrifying. The levels of dioxin were over 100 times higher than what was considered hazardous. On December 23, 1982, just 2 days before Christmas, the government announced a total evacuation of the town. The entire town was bought by the government for $32 million. All 2,240 residents had to abandon their homes and everything they owned. Over the next decade, the entire town was dismantled and incinerated in a specially built facility on site. Every house, every tree, every street sign was burned to ashes. Today, the location of Times Beach is Route 66 State Park. There's a visitor center and an old roadhouse that was spared, but the town itself is gone. It was literally erased. A chilling testament to how quickly a home can become a tomb. We are now at number 2, and, well, the story is one of the most infamous environmental disasters in American history. It's a story about a dream community built directly on top of a buried nightmare. I'm talking about Love Canal, a neighborhood in Niagara Falls, New York. In the 1940s and 50s, a chemical company used an unfinished canal as a dumping ground. They sealed 22,000 tons of toxic industrial waste into metal drums and buried them. Then they covered it with dirt and sold the land to the city for $1. In the late 1950s, the city, despite warnings from the chemical company, decided to build a school and a housing development right on top of the old dump site. For years, things seemed normal. Kids played in the fields, and families built their lives there. But under the ground, the chemical drums were rusting and leaking. The poison began to seep upwards. Black, foul-smelling sludge started oozing into people's basements. Puddles of strange chemicals appeared in their yards. By the late 1970s, the residents, led by a local mother named Lois Gibbs, began to connect the dots. They were experiencing an alarming rate of miscarriages, birth defects, and rare cancers. Children who played in the fields had chemical burns on their feet. After a long and bitter fight, the state and federal government were finally forced to act. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter declared a federal emergency, the first ever for a man-made disaster, and ordered the evacuation of hundreds of families. The image of Love Canal became a symbol of corporate and governmental negligence. The houses closest to the canal were demolished and the whole area was fenced off, a containment zone in the middle of a suburb, while parts of the surrounding neighborhood were later cleaned and resettled under the name Black Creek Village. The core of Love Canal remains a scar on the landscape and in the nation's memory. It's a terrifying story about the poison we try to bury and how it always, eventually, finds its way back to the surface. And that brings us to our number one spot, a place so notorious it earned the nickname Helltown. Officially, the area is Boston, Ohio, but the legends that surround it have given it a much darker reputation. Unlike the other towns on this list, Helltown wasn't evacuated because of a toxic spill or a mine fire. It was emptied for a reason that, on the surface, sounds perfectly reasonable. In 1974, President Gerald Ford authorized the creation of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and the village of Boston Mills was right in the middle of the proposed land. The federal government used eminent domain to buy up every single house and business in the area. Residents were forced out, some of whom had lived there for generations. The plan was to demolish the buildings and return the land to nature, but then, the government ran out of money. The demolition stopped, and the houses were just left standing, empty and abandoned. Boarded up with no trespassing signs from the US government plastered on them, the town became a ghost town overnight, and that's when the stories started. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human imagination. The empty roads, the derelict houses, and the deep dark woods of the national park became a breeding ground for urban legends. People started talking about satanic cults meeting in the old Presbyterian church, a mutant creature known as the Peninsula Python, a school bus full of dead children, and a road that, if you drive down it, is a dead end from which you'll never return, aptly named the end of the world. The creepy reality of a government-forced ghost town blurred with supernatural horror. While most of the buildings have since been torn down, the legends persist. The real story of Helltown is creepy enough, a community dismantled by a government program that stalled, leaving a wound on the landscape. But it's the addition of the folklore that makes it our number one. It's a place where real, structural creepiness, the sight of an abandoned home, the unsettling quiet, fused with our deepest fears of the dark. It's a reminder that when you empty a place of its people, you invite other, much stranger things to move in. From the slow decay of Cairo to the legends of Helltown, these places serve as chilling reminders that the scariest things are often the ones we create ourselves. They are monuments to environmental disasters, economic collapse, and forgotten promises. The ghosts that haunt these towns aren't spirits of the dead, they are the lingering consequences of decisions made by the living. They are places on a map that tell a story, and that story is a warning. So, I have to ask, would you stay the night knowing the locals wouldn't? Which one of these towns unsettled you the most? Let us know in the comments. I read as many as I can, and I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts. Remember, sometimes the scariest places aren't haunted, they're just forgotten. And if you have a suggestion for a strange, dark, or mysterious place you think we should cover, please tell us about it below. Thank you for joining me on this unsettling road trip across America. If you enjoyed it and you're not already, please like and subscribe for more stories that make you rethink your next road trip, and let me know what you think about the music timing in this one. Was the build-up in the intro effective? Your feedback really helps us make these stories better. Until next time, stay safe out there, and maybe check the local history before you book a room.